Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience and for joining us today for Together as One, a special community panel talk in preparation for Opera Lamb's production of As One, May 21st and 23rd. Who has their tickets? Who has their tickets? All right, good for you guys. And those that don't, I'll help you buy them at the end. Don't worry, don't worry. Well, we have some very special guests today. I think one just arrived. And we have, well, we said we were going to sneak you in, but so much for that, Angelica. We have a seat for you right down here. Yes, thank you, thank you. We're going to let them be introduced by our host. But I just want to thank you all so much for being here today. Isn't this a beautiful facility? Let's hear it for the Orlando Ballet. Many thanks to them for hosting us. And I want to shout out to our partners, 26 Health, for underwriting this production. Thank you, 26 Health. And our friends at the Zebra Coalition and the LGBTQ Center. Let's hear it for them. Our host today is none other than Chevalier Lovett, one of our board members and a fabulous community activist and advocate here. I'm going to turn the time over for him to take it away. Let's hear for Chev Lovett, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Oh, wow. All right. Hi, as Dave said, my name is Chevalier Lovett. My pronouns are he, him, or they, them. It is an honor and a pleasure to be the host of this panel and to have this deep conversation with our guests today, for you all here listening. As One, for those who do not know, is a one-act chamber opera that tells the coming-of-age story of Hannah, a trans woman. It is an intimate piece for two singers both portraying Hannah, her before, and her after. What has been amazing about this piece is the positive way it has allowed opera to engage with the trans community, spurring discussions like the one we are about to have today. And I am very humbled to be joined by this fantastic group of individuals to shed light on opera or Orlando's trans community, how it fits within the greater LGBTQ+ spectrum, and how allyship is so important to the continued journey of acceptance and safety of the trans community. So I'm going to introduce our panel very quickly, and I'm going to start here. And panelists, just very quickly, if you can just say hello to the crowd and those at home, and just give us your preferred pronouns as well. So right, we have Maestra Alexandra Enyart.
Hi, my pronouns are she, her, hers.
And Alexandra is the conductor for As One, so please welcome Alexandra. Here we have Michelle Kurtiak, who is the Transgender Services Facilitator for the LGBTQ+ Center of Orlando.
And my pronouns are also she, her, and hers.
And please welcome her. Thank you. Another great panelist that we have is the Executive Director of the Zebra Coalition, a friend of mine and of the Wilkie.
Hi everyone, my pronouns are she, her, hers.
I am so excited to have this and to introduce this next panelist, next guest, who has become a close friend of mine, known all around the world, but definitely a local gem here. Angelica Michelle Jones, also known as Angelica Sanchez.
Hello, my pronouns are she, her, and her.
And joining us virtually is another special treat that we just found out today, the composer of the piece As One, Laura Kaminsky.
Hi everybody, I'm with you.
Thank you, Laura. And last but not least, we have the president, co-CEO, and co-founder of 26 Health, the actual sponsor of this opera, Dr. David Baker-Hargrove.
Hi everybody. My pronouns are be reverse, and I'm a person of non-binary and gay experience.
Thank you. So thank you for being with us today. As I said, for As One, at its core, it is a universal story of self-discovery and self-acceptance. And no matter where you fit along the spectrum of gender or sexuality, we all strive for that. So let's get a little preview of the piece from the American Opera Project premiere in 2014.
every other boy, I had a paper route. And like every good boy, I wake each morning, ride my bike around with my jacket on, and enjoy the thump of a well-laid paper as it lands. However, unlike every other boy, I sometimes wake extra early while everyone's asleep. Ride my bike around with my jacket on and a blouse underneath. The blouse I stole from a neighbor's clothesline. It isn't much, but fits my 12-year-old frame. And just feels so right. We have been separated by gender to learn about sex. I must be the perfect boy, the fastest, the smartest, the strongest, the best. When I see her on TV, there she is, and I hear the word, the real word, the magic word. Finally, a name for this. That is me. That is my word. There are others. There are others to learn. I'm not the only one. The relief, the power, just to know, just to know.
That is super powerful music, and one of the words that stuck out to me was "there are others." And, I got chills just thinking about that. So, Opera Orlando's production marks the Orlando premiere of this work, which has quickly become one of the most produced operas each season since 2014, and when it premiered. So it's incredible considering how modern and hard down this piece is. My first question is going to go to our conductor, Alexandra. Why do you think this work has become the most performed American opera over the past 6 years?
Well, first off, thank you again for having me here. Even listening to that again now, I am surprised by how deeply moved I am to hear as one. I've done it, this will be my 5th production, and I'm trans myself, and it is just so powerfully written to connect us to human experiences. And on top of that, the music is so excellent and beautiful to carry us and connect us to people. There is a lot that we do where we have so many layers of separation between each other right now, and we put all these divisions amongst ourselves, and all these boundaries and walls, and who are we and what are we, and I feel like as one lets us experience a person being a person, and that is beautiful when transgender has become a word that can sometimes just mean other. And I think that that really, really resonates with basically everybody who somehow, for some reason, feels like they're forced to walk a path, they're forced to walk away that they don't want to and shouldn't have to. And I think anyone can resonate and be moved that way. On top of that, it is absolutely beautifully put together. The combination of the text, the movie, the music, the whole thing makes it very easy to bring to any city and meaningful to any audience. And I think that that's really contributed to why it travels so very much.
Thank you. I also want to pass it to our composer. Again, this is a treat to have the composer here with us and to speak about it. And so, Laura, from your perspective, why do you think it's become one of the most performed operas?
Well, first of all, it's a real treat to be here with you. And I wish that I was there in person, especially because I want to be balanced a bit. I think what Mark and Kim and I presented this in 2014, we really had no expectation that it was going to have a life. It was an interesting time in the of understanding of trans identity and trans issues. In fact, we don't even have the word transgender in the libretto at all. And during our early rehearsals and our public outreach and community engagement programs, the word cisgender was just becoming part of the vocabulary, and nobody knew what it meant. And here we are, 7 years later, and how much progress has been made. So we feel a little bit responsible for having helped bring this conversation forward through our art. It's a very intimate piece. The original premise was basically my asking the question, what does it mean to be your true self? And in so becoming your true self, what do you have to give up? What do you have to say goodbye to? What do you hold on to fully blossom? And in that process, what does that do to you in the world that you know? What does it do to your prior relationships, your current relationships, your future relationships? What sacrifices, what fears, what joys? So basically, it's for everybody. Told through the lens of this one very beautiful, quirky, sometimes annoying, sometimes lovable person named Anna. And it was done as a very intimate piece because I wanted to be a person talking to himself, in dialogue with himself. So it was asked originally, before we even had a story, I knew that it was going to be a male and female voice being one person. And because of that, and no other characters, any other engagement was in the mind or being told, that I want a very intimate ensemble to create the world that would hold the person's story. And what could be more intimate than a string quartet, which is basically one voice, strings. And in so doing, I decided that the viola, which is the middle voice of the string quartet, and most often the one that doesn't get to express itself very much, to represent hand control. And so the viola has a kind of prominent role, echoing some of the internal emotional journey that hand goes on during the piece.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. So Maestra, you said before this was going to be your 5th production. And as a musician myself, I know sometimes every production is different. And you learn something new every single time. So how do you approach this story? How do you approach this music every single time? And how are you approaching it this time?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me is figuring out who is this Hannah. Who is Hannah this time? And I am so excited. I've gotten to do it with different casts each time, which is wonderful. This time I've worked with both Michael and Elise, but never together, and it's their first time finding Hannah together, which is always so exciting. Because she can be different. She can be funnier, she can be more serious, she can have the sadder moments can play differently. What's her relationship with her family? And all these little bits and pieces come out differently every single time. On top of that, the different direction and the different ways that we have Jess Hannah is the director, who is going to be putting all the different pieces in motion, always makes it so unique anyway. So then it's a matter of making sure that everything stays lined up musically so that everyone's nice and comfortable, so that they have the space to really act and fill in all those details, fill in all the pieces of Hannah's life that are so small and in such small, subtle ways that shape the music. But when it's there, it's so powerful. And I will say at this time that Michael and Elise are definitely there. There's a lot of detail in Hannah, and I'm very excited to get to share this Hannah in Orlando.
Thank you. So Laura also spoke about the viola. So one of the great things about a panel discussion and you being here to hear this is that you get to hear some of the secrets. That's some of my favorite things. And as you come to the production, you'll get to, I hope, hear some of the things that we spoke about. And so, Laura, you spoke that the viola is this voice for Hannah. Is there any other secret within the orchestration that we should listen for that allows us to understand a little bit more where you're going with this?
Well, I mean, one of the things that was learned immediately is that a baritone voice and a mezzo voice only have a very few notes in common that they can both sing comfortably. And they're both at the extreme opposites of their ranges. And that was the sweet spot for the as one unified music that I needed to write. So that created a kind of, technical constraint for me. I would say that now there are more trans singers who are going to be able to sing the piece. And that's very exciting to Mark and Kim and me, with my co-librettists, because we're beginning to be much more gender expansive in our thinking, and so just there's that sweet moment place in the voice where they can be as one. And those people where they are in unison, just every time kind of like hit people in the butt. The thing, I think Alex is going to agree with me, there's one song, one scene called Perfect Boy, which is it's a musical physical joke. His poor Hannah, as a young boy, is trying to outdo and outbe to just squash this truth that they weren't looking to embrace. And want to be the best athlete and the best student and the best child and the best of everything. And it's repetitive, it keeps moving, it's very pulsing music, but it can never be perfect because it's everything not a truth, right? So the music just keeps going bang, 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 but the quartet and the singer are not ever lined up, and sometimes there's groups of 5 notes and sometimes groups of 6 notes because they only come together every 30 notes in a safe place. And no piano before has ever come to me without saying, oh, almost told me it's not possible to do it perfectly. And I say, that's the point. I want you to not feel perfect when you're doing it so that you can truly embody the terror and the discomfort that we're having before have to have as a human being. But as Alex knows, there's a built-in safety valve in each section of this kind of frenetic motion, so that when they do get off, which inevitably they will, we might perform it, the Maestra can protect them all and kind of go on trying to be perfect yet again.
Thank you for that, Laura. I like how you also said that baritones have a limited range. Someone did not tell Grammy Award winner Gabriel Chrysler that there is a range. So Gabriel, did you hear that?
What?
Yes, baritones have range. So get out of that kind of range. One more for you, Maestra. You did say to us that you were transforming yourself and being a conductor in this music and then being able to conduct this piece. What has it personally meant to you?
I think that the story that I like to tell about this is that As One is the second piece that I conducted after I graduated. I left school, I headed out, and I had just transitioned, and I went, and As One was right there. And I really truly thought that looking for a transgender opera was going to be my life's work, that was going to take a long time to get to. And so for it to be immediate right out of the gate, it's been so special. And it's one of those things where it doesn't have any less of that weight, where if I got into this when I was 60 or 70, it would still have all the same meaning as getting there, the first time at 24. It's just so meaningful, and it's just a reminder that life doesn't happen in a straight line. And that's how I think about this. Every single second that I get to do it is a complete honor and a privilege, and it's so tremendously special to get to do As One. If I never conducted again, I would have conducted more than most people have, than Phil's many lifetimes over. And I'm so grateful to have had this experience in this piece, and I think it's really very nice to have that, where it's basically a security of having done something really important and getting to continue to do something really important over and over again in different cities around the country and around the world. So it's very, very, very personally meaningful to me. I try to bring my absolute best to every show I do. As One has an extra layer of just love and joy and care that is impossible for me to recreate in any other show quite the same way. Just, when I watch As One, it is my life. It's very powerful. And I can't wait to share that in the intimacy and the detail of all of that with everyone here and beyond.
Thank you so much for that. That was very, very powerful. Back in 2020, and so far long ago, it feels like it was a decade ago, we went through this cultural revolution where we understood that representation truly matters. And we actually, as a company, started a series called Representation Matters, because it's very important for folks to see people that are them, that look like them, that have had their same shared experiences reflected on the stage and through the arts. And so I'm very grateful for that. Speaking of representation, I want to bring in a few more of our panelists. And Michelle, I want to go to you. If you can tell us a little bit about what your role is at the LGBTQ+ Center of Orlando, and why you particularly believe, and your perspective on why representation is important.
Yes, I am Transgender Services Facilitator here at the center, a position that has been recently created, and I'm glad it is created. We've not had transgender representation here at the center for pretty much its inception, so I think it's very important, given that we're the LGBT center, and I'm honored to fill that position. I come from a corporate background and IT in particular, and I was very unfulfilled after nearly 3 decades of that. And when I decided to leave that, I wanted to come in and give back to the community that was there for me almost a decade ago when I decided to transition. I myself a transgender woman. So when that availability came about, I volunteered there for about a year and then was offered this position. I facilitate groups geared towards transgender individuals, non-binary, or gender non-conforming, across the spectrum. We facilitate a group specifically for children and their parents and caregivers. This group is for children 5 and up until their teens. And it's amazing to see where we've come in the fact that these parents are recognizing that their children are who they are and are encouraging them to be who they are and are supporting them. And we also come together to help support them as well. That is an amazing and fulfilling thing to be witness to, given growing up as an individual and realizing as a child in the 70s that I didn't know who I was. I didn't understand who I was. I knew I was different. And I didn't have an answer or a label or anything to give myself. So knowing that these parents are there for their children, I know they're doing them a great service. And in many ways maybe saving their lives. Because it is a common, sad statistic of suicide of transgender youth. And I hope that statistic goes down and down because it is so needed. I'm glad that I'm a part of this community. I'm glad I love Orlando, I love the LGBT Center, and I wouldn't be anywhere else. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life.
Thank you, Michelle. Heather, the Zebra Coalition does a lot of work with youth and young adults, and it's really increasingly important, now more than ever, that we have support systems for folks who may be in the trans community and younger. And so, can you speak a little bit about how the Zebra Coalition provides support to folks in this way?
For sure. So, Zebra Coalition, we provide primarily housing and mental health support for youth and adolescents ages 13 to 24. The majority right now, well, actually, we're looking at about 45% of our population at Zebra Coalition identify as transgender or non-binary. And so we are very supportive in that community. Our therapists are trained in working with trauma reduction. We do a lot of work with parents. We have support groups for parents, and then also specific groups for anyone under the age of 18 who identify as trans and non-binary to provide that safe space. There have been challenges for events and groups, obviously, over the last year, but we've been able to reach so many young people through telehealth, and it actually opened up an opportunity for us because many of the young people have been very isolated. And so if you're coming from a family where they may or may not be supportive of who you are, the ability to be able to reach out and speak to a trained professional is so critical during this time. And so we're very fortunate to have been able to expand our reach over the last year and a half to make sure that we're reaching this particular population. And I know that you had asked Chev about representation, and I'm watching the trailer and I'm listening to everyone speak back about this show. And representation for young trans people, it's so important. So being able to see this in the arts and to be able to both reciprocate it from opera too. They're now exposed to opera, and opera is exposed to the issues that are important to them. So I'm very, very grateful that this community is having this show, and happy to make sure that we have a lot of our youth attend the performances because it's so important for representation.
Thank you, Heather. So, Angelica, I know you wrote that down. You and I have done a few panels like this together, actually. And as we spoke about the cultural revolution piece that happened in 2020, and you as a trans woman, how important is representation to you? Why is representation important especially being a Black trans woman?
I think representation is so important because I try and think about what my life was like, and like looking at a little bit of the opera, I kind of can understand where an individual come from when realizing that, why am I different? Do I need to keep these things secret? You know, for me, I was blessed to have seen someone like a Sylvester or someone like George Michael and different people who were in touch with their other side, you know, or their truest self. And because I was blessed to see those types of things, it allowed me to be able to connect with something else and realize that I'm not the only one. That was so like moving and powerful when they kind of realized, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not by myself. You know, we, in this journey called life, we are all individuals. We all only have this body to inhabit, so you do feel alone. And sometimes in life you're gonna be alone, but there are so many things that connect us, and that is so powerful for individuals because you're not alone, you know, and it makes you realize that because of that, I can be my truest, authentic self.
Thank you, Angelica. Dr. David, you introduced your pronouns as he versus her, and as non-binary. So I have 2 questions for you in particular. Can you just quickly explain to us what a pronoun is and why in the last at least 3 to 5 years it's been on the top of folks' minds and agendas, and why it's so important to call folks by their proper pronoun?
Well, so we identify ourselves just because it's part of the language that we become identified for ourselves and the pronouns that we use. Everything, there's so much about our existence around us that we don't even aware of, it's unconscious, that is very gendered. Unless, of course, you're a member of the trans community, and then it sticks out to you and haunts you every day, where you see how gendered the world is. And if you're a cisgender person, you don't notice it because it just all kind of goes around you unconsciously. But for, you know, those of us in the community, it is, I have the advantage, you know, because of, you know, my identity is a little bit more invisible, and, you know, I can kind of move freely, but, you know, for a lot of us in the trans community, we don't fit what we call a typical silhouette, and it opens people up for, you know, harassment, discrimination, violence. You know, we're just being treated unnecessarily nasty. And, you know, and showing and using proper pronouns is just a really simple, immediate way to show respect for that person's identity. And it goes a long way for folks in the trans community to just know that they're affirmed. So, you know, by asking what are your pronouns, you know, my pronouns, you know, and so like 26L, you know, our policy is that when you're meeting someone for the first time, and you're like, hi, my name is David, my pronouns are he, her, hers. What are your pronouns? And so it invites people into a welcoming space, and it can do so much to validate people's existence. Just saying, yes, we're affirming and we're welcoming and we accept you as you are.
Thank you, Dr. David. So a key to success of organizations, and you spoke about the 26 Health and kind of your policies are around that, but a key to the success of a lot of these organizations is advocacy and awareness. And what they do for our community, which is really connecting folks to services and to those things that are needed for our communities that are most needed. Angelica, you, like myself, you're a community leader, you're a community activist, we're loud and proud together, and we have been several times. How do you see, and I'm going to open this up to the rest of the panel as well, but I'm going to start with Angelica. How do you see your role in raising awareness? What is your role, and how do you do that?
I think my role has been just being able to share my life experience. For me, I was born in '77, so, and I came out in about '94 as trans. I mean, back then we didn't know that it was called trans. You were either just a transsexual or, you know, those other derogatory words that we just, you know, don't say anymore. But for me, it was realizing, oh, I'm not gay. I am just a heterosexual woman that just so happens to be in this body. So my faith kind of taught me that I was gonna have to bear this cross. I mean, my faith teaches me we all have a cross to bear, but this is my cross to bear. It was about me living in my authentic truth so that I didn't harm anyone else's life. I got to come out around seeing Jerry Springers and all those other types of things, you know. Sometimes it was made a mockery of, but at the same time, it allowed me to see myself in certain situations that I wasn't gonna live a life of a lie. So sharing my life experience is my way of advocating for other people. I was blessed to be able to have a chosen family as well as a biological family that accepted me. With the biological family, it took time, you know. Parents have a dream for their children, even though they might see that their child is different. I mean, in hindsight, the conversations that I was blessed to have with my parents, they wanted a girl and then they kind of got a girl, but it just didn't come the way they wanted. You know, so I think they saw this in me before I even knew what it was myself. It was confusing for me because I just saw myself as, okay, I like girly things, I'm a girl, just something that's different about me, and I'll find my way. But truly sharing my life experience, I believe, has been able to help others. When you're able to just be truthful and make sure your intentions are in the right place so that you don't hurt or harm anyone else. And I think that's brought a lot of acceptance to people that I get to meet, you know. I just try to love everybody and treat people the way that I want to be treated, even if they do me wrong. I try and still just try and show them a better way of doing things, because this world hurts you, you know. So you can't wear that hurt.
Thank you, Angelica. Anyone else on the panel want to answer that question? How do you show, how do you do better?
Michelle. I believe very similarly. Through advocacy, education, that's kind of my mission, and fortunately the same mission at this center. Similarly, growing up, it was that lack of identity, not knowing who I was. And being born in the late '60s, there was nothing there. And I know you mentioned Jerry Springer. For me, it was Donahue. For the older crowd here, it was a Donahue episode where he came out wearing a skirt, and it was about awareness in that way. And then I was finally able to say, wow, there's others, just like in the trailer. It was I connected very well on a lot of what the trailer presented us. Growing up, my mother wanted. I'm an only child and was very happy to have had her little boy. And inside, I knew I wasn't that, but I didn't know what I really was. And having, growing up that way, you learn you're actually heterosexual. I learned I'm a lesbian. So, because I expected to like men when I hit puberty, and I was shocked at the same time going, well, it's not happening. I like girls, but I also want to be one. I want to look like one. So now I was even more confused in Nika when puberty hit, because there really wasn't anything to identify there. So having representation, having education out, and educating others, putting on productions as one, is so important to hopefully teach the community more and more about who we are and our struggles and our journeys. So.
Thank you, Michelle. I also noticed that your music notes is, and I love like you came prepped and ready with music notes for this discussion. We're in the days that masks are now a fashion statement. So I see Alexandra, I thought I saw you wanted to answer that, and I'll go when I see Angelica as well. Yep.
So I think that these are absolutely beautiful answers. I wanna talk a little bit about the toll that being a constant advocate for yourself and your community can take also. Because I think that's really important, and as we raise awareness and all these things, it can be exhausting to have to constantly be advocating for yourself. When I was deciding kind of how to brand myself, I had to decide that I was going to use the words transgender, conductor together like that often so that people could find it. Because when I was coming out, there were none. There were 0 transgender conductors alive. And it was a matter of, okay, is this possible? Like, I thought my career was over. And so I don't want it to be like that for anyone else. And so now, the most meaningful thing is when people who are trans are reaching out to me and saying, I'm a conductor, I want to do this, I didn't know it was possible. That means everything to me, but it is exhausting. And then the other side of things is that I was doing an interview the other day with Opera Orlando, and they asked me about trans issues in sports. I am an opera conductor. Why am I talking about sports and the way that relates to trans people? But when you are in a minority community, you somehow have to be an advocate for the entirety of the community, where it's one of those things, when's the last time that you heard the orchestra conductor ask how the football team is doing? It's a ridiculous thing. And so, here we are having to answer for all these other aspects. I have to be an endocrinologist and talk about why taking hormones is going to be okay, or all these different things. And these questions can come out of anywhere, at any time, and you have to be kind of versed on them. So I think that's also, there's not only is advocacy being totally out and kind of exposing yourself for the world to look in on you, which is already work, but then you also have to go through these other hoops for probing questions that come from all over the place. And I think that there's like this, sometimes you're like really ready to do it, and sometimes it can be hard and you're like, all right, we have to do this, we have to keep doing it, because as long as people are hurting themselves for being people, you can't not, you have to. You have to help, and that's the thing. And the more help that we get from cisgender people, the less that we have to do all this lifting on our own.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to go to the next one, but you brought something up. So Dr. David, I want you to be on deck and ready to talk about mental health in this way, because it is a burden, and it can take a lot on you emotionally, on your being. And so we're going to talk about what mental health looks like in the LGBT+ community as well. But Angelica, I know you wanted to say something, and then we'll go to Dr. David.
I was just going to say, it took me a while to realize that my sexuality wasn't aligned with my gender, and I think that's one thing that a lot of people get misconstrued and don't understand. And you're so correct. Being a Black transgender woman, I cannot answer every question for everything that's dealing with transgender or the LGBTQ+ community. Everything is back to what I was saying. You're an individual first, but sometimes we do have to step in those voids just to get some type of allyship from someone else who might not understand. So I totally get where you're coming from. Like, why ask about sports when, hello, I'm music theater.
So transitioning from how to reconciling, I remember when I came out, and how believe it or not, I'm still coming out. There are moments where I still have to say to myself, and to say to others, actually, I'm a queer person in this space, and oftentimes I'm the only queer person in this space, and I know a lot of us can feel that, and we understand that. But it does take a mental, it's mentally challenging. It does take a lot of you, especially being an activist. So Dr. David, can you speak to us a little bit about mental health support What services also, 26 Health is an organization that also provides mental health support to folks, particularly in the LGBTQ plus space. But 26 Health, they are here for every letter, all letters of the alphabet. You're welcome there. So, Dr. can you talk a little bit about mental health?
So, hopefully as, each human being, we should all be on a, long journey of personal discovery and really learning who we are. The blessing and the curse for being a trans person is that you're not really given a choice whether you're going to go on that journey or not. And because it's so stark, you really have to take that examination of who you are and what it means to be male or female and what that means to you. And there are, a lot of people who've never had to wrestle with that. They walk through their lives unconsciously and don't even really think about how fundamental it is to our identities. But it's extremely fundamental, and it's really, it's a struggle as much as it is a gift of being, having the opportunity to really look deeply inside and really understand who you are at the core of your identity. But it's not easy, it's a hard journey. And and what makes it harder is that all of the lack of acceptance that comes from around you. And and it's hard to describe to a person who's non-trans that the fear that, having to go to the bathroom in a public space and and going and there's no family designated restroom or it's a single use or, having to go into the public restroom and knowing what that fear is like. So everyday things happen, for trans folks that affect their mental health and can take a toll on their psyche. There's been a lot of research that's been conducted in this area that trans people often have the same kinds of levels of PTSD that people returning from the Middle Eastern wars have, because of that need to be on hyper alert on where the danger is coming from. Is someone going to affront me in some way, whether it be emotionally or even physically, because trans people are killed for no other reason than being who they are, and being perceived as such in our society. And unfortunately, most of that is really targeted towards trans women, and specifically even more trans women of color. And I've always thought to myself, that's because really it comes down to sexism is so rampant in our society. Being a woman is still a second-class position, and so unwittingly, people unknowingly who are in the mainstream, make this, I believe, a connection in their brains is why would anyone want to give up their male power to be female and not really understand that that's not what that's about. And so there's so much complexity that goes on, for our trans brothers and sisters. And so, mental health counseling can be an integral part to helping with that adjustment. Now, of course, it was the standard for many years that you absolutely had to go through a certain amount of mental health counseling in order to even begin medical transition. And that was the law of our medical society. Because we didn't really believe, as in the medical profession, that trans people were really trans. And we wanted to look for every kind of other explanation possible before we would go, okay, we're trans. So luckily we've moved away from that quite a bit. It's still recommended for a person before they begin medical transition to meet with a therapist, but it's really not supposed to be a gatekeeper kind of situation. It's really supposed to, the therapist is really supposed to help that person assess where their growth opportunities and needs are in terms of how they can set themselves up for a successful transition. Because there's just a lot of things that we wrestle with as we contemplate transition. that you don't really know, you don't really discover it until you're kind of there, and it's very stage-like and evolutionary, and it's a, you know, it's a long process. It really never ends, just like for any of us, you know, that are just moving through life. That evolution of knowing who we are never really ends. So that's what we try to achieve at 26 Health. I mean, we provide the behavioral health component. We also provide a medical component, a medical transition that assists people with larger medical transition issues like getting surgeries and that kind of stuff, even though we don't do that here at 26 Health. Not yet anyway. But then really, you know, looking now, you know, my kind of look now is what are the health needs of our trans folks, our trans patients, you know, moving now through the lifespan. You know, when you start medical transition at age 20, you know, what are your health needs going to be when you're 80? And we don't know any of that yet because this is all new. And it's all uncharted territory. It's going to be really, I mean, I think a fascinating thing for us to learn and really helpful for our population as we grow older. So that's really kind of the things that we like to focus on. We're not specifically a transgender medical health facility, but that kind of grew out of my private practice as a therapist because unwittingly I've been working with transgender clients since the late 90s, and it just kind of became like something I was known for. Not even realizing at the time that I was even like an adjacent member of the community, because we weren't talking about, like Laura said, you know, there were so many things we weren't talking about at 214. We weren't talking about gender being on a spectrum, you know, more than 5 years ago, so I didn't even know what non-binary was. And so we started talking about those words, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're talking about me. And so it's, I lost my train of thought there, but anyway, you know, so that's really all we, you know, but we do have, oh, here I'm back. So actually about 47% of our patient population is on the transgender spectrum in some way. So we do a lot of, we are heavily invested in the wellness of, you know, our trans folks.
If I could just jump in, may I do that?
Please.
It's a little weird, I'm not sure who's hearing or saying what, but that was just very spot on for some of the things that we wanted to address in writing this story. You know, of the two co-writers, Kimberly Reed is trans, and while this is not in any way her biography, we wanted to create a kind of universal character that everybody can relate to of any identity as a human being, but we wanted to make sure that there were some truths that were dealt with throughout the storytelling. And there's one line that sort of speaks to some of the, like the medical issues for trans people, as if one puberty weren't awful enough. Like hormones and like all of those things in your body and the awkwardness, and then puberty is also your own sense of self-awareness and discovery of your sexuality and your attraction, and then we're gonna have to do it all over again as you emerge. I mean, like the truth of that is, I think, why there's this universal appeal, because whatever your identity is, the idea of having to relive that is a torture, right?
That's so great, yes.
And then to your rather horrific and sad point about the undue violence against trans people, we knew that that needed to be addressed, and yet we didn't feel there was a way to make it believable for our Hannah to have experienced it in a really fully traumatic, disabling way. So we have a scene in the opera where she's attacked but gets away, and it's her first awareness that, A, she's not alone. Like, there's a world out there, and she starts to do research, and there's this litany of names of trans people from all over the world with all kinds of stories. That is her awareness, and that's the moment for her where she realizes, I'm part of this bigger universe, and I have to own my truth. And it is a tragedy that continues, and I think unfortunately there's been more permission for some of these transgressions and violence. So it's against particularly trans women of color, but just in general. And it will get better. Just the fact that this dialogue has gotten better over time. And as Kim has said, when we've done these kinds of panel discussions, when I was growing up, it was about coming out as gay, which was traumatic, and there was no language for it, and there was no public identity around it. Back then, something like 18% of people said they knew a trans person, a gay person. And now over 90% of the population knows a gay person. Well, approximately 18% of the population now thinks they know a trans person. So let's jump ahead 30 years. 90% of the world will know trans people. I mean, we're, as hard as this is, and with all the ugliness that we see against from the system being afraid, truth will out and change will happen. And, you know, we're gonna have a different conversation with different identity and ability to be oneself issues in 30 years. And trans people will be thought of as quaint, historic fact, because there will be integration. I mean, I have to be hopeful for that.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Thank
I
you
just
so
have
much.
to jump in on your comments.
Really appreciate that. Thank you. So here's one of the things that's really frustrating to me as a moderator of the panel. I want to spend 8 hours with our brilliant panelists. And believe it or not, we're winding down on time. And there's so much still to unpack. However, the last thing I want to say, and I'm going to first ask Heather, and for our local folks, I'm going to first ask Heather, then I'm going to turn it over to you, Michelle, and then very quickly to you, Angelica. You know, we've gone through so much. We've come a very, very long way with LGBTQ plus things here in our country, in our state, here locally. I believe totally the Pulse tragedy brought us very, very close together. I have permission to share this as well, but you know, our own Angelica is a Pulse survivor and is here still as an activist, right, for our community. Allyship is very, very crucial. And speaking, and Heather, how do we be better at allyship? What would you say to someone who doesn't yet know how to get allied, or to someone who wants to be a better ally?
These conversations are so important. You know, I think it starts here. I think it starts with connecting. And to your point about knowing 18% of the population who knows a trans person, well, you probably do know a trans person. That's the reality of it. But having the conversation, visibility, making sure that you are supporting organizations and people who are struggling in this community. We are very supportive. I agree that Pulse completely shifted our community in so many positive ways. I was in my role at Zebra during that time, and it was, you know, such a tragedy and so many horrible things that happened from it. But then we also had a opportunity to come together as a community, and that opportunity is still here, and I think that we're still very connected, but there's still a lot of work to do, right? We know that we've brought up the transports issues that are happening, and there's a lot of legislation that's happening right now that it's very harmful to our kids. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we advocate in support of them, that we're here for our next generation, because they are amazing. They're going to change the world. They're not going away. If anything, they're going to clog you out. To make sure you all know, that it's not okay to hate or to treat people poorly because of who they are. So definitely stay in touch with these organizations that are represented here and have those conversations starting at home and then moving forward.
Thank you so much, Heather. Michelle, what would you say your elevator pitch of allyship would be?
Allyship. Be open, be willing to hear and learn, especially if you have a question, be respectful of that question and ask. Can I ask you a question? If you know, be more accountable to pronouns. It is something. Don't make assumptions. The world has changed a bit. Sometimes that's difficult. But it's changing, and it's a good thing. People want to be who they are. They don't want to live under some strict umbrella. And there's nothing wrong with that. Being an ally is so important for our survival. Without allies, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I'm thankful for every one of you that are allies, because I wouldn't be here probably for that if it wasn't for something about your being here in the community supporting us. Support these communities, support these organizations, be mindful of who you elect and in political office. It's very disheartening right now in the legislation that's out there. And, but I'm trying my best to present and educate people to understand why they don't need to fear. So, thank you for being here for us.
Thank you, Michelle. And to close this out, Angelica, allyship. How do we do it?
Allyship, lead by example. You sit back sometimes and allow people to tell their story. Don't tell it for them. You listen, you learn, and I think the bottom line when it comes to allyship is compassion. When we start to see ourselves in each other, and we start to realize that we have a lot in common as individuals, as people that are just trying to live this journey called life, you end up with understanding, you end up with compassion, and then you're able to go and tell someone else about that. And lead by example. People will see that light in you that shines, and they'll want it for themselves. So I think allyship is very important, but allies don't need to crowd the space so much to where our voices don't get heard.
Yes. So I promise I'm not being rude to myself, but that's my affirmation. So as we close, I'm sorry I was not able to take questions from the audience, but our panelists will be here for a little bit, so social distance questions is okay. I want to remind folks that as one, it will make it to Orlando career on a very special day, May 21st. Happens to be my birthday and Dr. David's birthday. So I just like to think that May 21st is just the days that all great things happen. But also on May 23rd, because you're here, you get a 15% promo on tickets with the word Hannah. So use that promo if you have not yet bought your tickets. If we can please give a hand to our panelists. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Our wonderful host, Chevalier Lovett. Thank you so much. Wonderful panelists, Laura, David, thanks for joining us virtually. Thank you so much. Laura and David are going to be disappointed, but we do have some goodies for you guys, some muffins and cookies. We haven't figured out how to email those to you guys yet, but we'll try. Also some waters out there. But yes, as one will be right here in this very room, May 21st and 23rd. Our panelists are going to be out there as well. If you have questions for them, I'm sure they would love to hear your questions. So please don't be shy. It's so important to have conversations like these. So thank you for being a part of this conversation today. And as always, we will see you at the opera. Take care, guys. Thank you.